There was a night not long ago when I sat alone in my car after a long day, hands on the steering wheel, engine off, and I remember thinking something just isn't right. On paper, everything looked good, a good career, a full clinic, had the patients waiting, a life I'd worked pretty hard for. But inside, I felt pretty stretched thin. I was distracted and unsettled in a way I could not ignore anymore. That moment did not come from failure. It came from success that no longer felt aligned. So I thought, what am I doing? This podcast that I'm starting exists because I finally stopped brushing that feeling aside, because I realized that staying quiet was starting to cost more than speaking up, and because I really do believe stories matter, especially the ones that explain how we got here and where we are going next. Today is not about credentials or opinions. It is about my story, how I got here, why I am doing what I'm doing now, and what I believe we are being called toward moving forward. If you've ever felt successful but restless, committed but conflicted, or certain that there is more ahead even if you cannot fully see it yet, then you are exactly who this conversation is for. And let me start at the beginning. Welcome to Country Doctor House Calls. I'm Dr. Adam McCall, the family physician practicing old school medicine in a modern world. This podcast is about truth over trends, relationships over algorithms, and common sense over noise. We'll talk about real medicine, bad medical advice, faith at the bedside, fatherhood, and what I've learned from thousands of patient visits. These are conversations you'd have if a country doctor pulled up a chair on your front porch and told you the truth with clarity and with care. No hype, no shortcuts, just honest medicine for real life. Somewhere along the way, I started noticing small things. My hairline, not all at once, just enough that I caught it in the mirror and paused a second longer than I used to. Recovery after a long day or a hard workout started taking more time. Not enough to complain about, just enough to notice. And then it hit me that my 30s had passed me by without asking permission. I did not feel old, but I no longer felt young in the way I once had. Those years had been full and productive, meaningful, but also relentless. I was building and providing and serving and grinding. I never really stopped to look up. The realization carried a heavier weight when I did the math. And if I'm honest, I've already lived half of my life, not hypothetically and not someday, but half of it is already behind me. That thought was sobering, and not in a fearful way, but in a way that was clarifying. It forced me to ask whether I was living intentionally or simply moving efficiently, whether I was present or just productive, whether the pace I had accepted was actually aligned with the life I wanted to look back on one day. That was not a crisis, it was a wake-up call. As far back as I can remember, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, not in a vague, someday kind of way, but in a way a child knows something before he knows how to explain it. I was probably 4 or 5, and while I could not articulate what medicine meant, I understood the idea of helping, fixing, and being present when someone needed care. As I got older, that sense of direction never left. It did not come and go. It shaped my choices quietly, long before I realized I was making them. At 11, I spent my weekends working in a veterinary clinic. I was a kennel boy. I was doing x-rays and I was giving shots. I was young, yes, but I knew I wanted to be close to something, close to responsibility, close to the actual work itself. At 12, I volunteered at the hospital, became a candy striper. As a teenager, I became a lifeguard. And on the surface, those things may have looked unrelated, but they were all pointing in the same direction. I was drawn to environments where people were vulnerable and where my presence could matter. I wanted to be near care, near urgency, near service. Looking back, it is clear that this was not a series of random steps, but it was a calling unfolding slowly. Every choice, every role, every season was moving toward this moment. Even when I did not know it yet, what the full picture would even look like. This was never just about my profession. It is about becoming someone who shows up when it counts. To say that it has been easy would be an understatement. College was the first time that calling was tested. Not questioned emotionally, but challenged practically. I remember going to India and coming back after the tsunami. We did some medical missions, and I had to take the MCAT. I took it confidently, I was prepared and really certain that I'd done okay. But in all reality, I failed it, like bad. And that moment forced a reckoning I had never really faced before. I had to ask myself whether my dreams were truly aligned with my abilities or whether desire alone was supposed to carry me through the rest of the way. For the first time, my calling in medicine felt fragile, not because I wanted it less, but because I could not assume it would just simply work out. So I went back to work. I studied differently. I took ownership of the gap between where I was and where I needed to be. When the MCAT came around the second time, I did well, not just well enough, but well in a way that restored the confidence and reaffirmed that this path was still open and still possible. Going to medical school was everything that I hoped it would be. I loved learning. I loved the pace, the challenge, the responsibility, and every rotation, mostly, felt fascinating. Every specialty had something to offer, but over time, I found myself gravitating towards surgery. The decisiveness, the craftsmanship, the clarity of action, and the outcome. I went after it. I matched into a strong surgical program in Columbus, Ohio. And on paper, it was a win, something I'd worked toward for years. But almost immediately, something felt off. At the same time, I was beginning residency. My new marriage that happened just 3 weeks prior didn't unfold the way that I expected it. The strain was real, the hours were long. My wife started to see a future forming that asked me to choose between someone who was fully present at home or fully committed to a surgical identity. That was the moment I realized that my legacy as a husband and someday as a father would matter more than my legacy as a surgeon. Not because surgery was wrong, because it was not worth the cost that it was demanding from the people that I loved the most. I switched to family medicine at first as a temporary solution, a way to slow things down, a way to reground my marriage and create space to breathe again. I told myself it did not have to be permanent. No, this was just something that I needed to be steady. But something unexpected happened. I started to enjoy it. I liked the relationships. I liked knowing families over time, and I liked being present not just for the diagnoses, but for the lives. In 2012 is where I would say everything changed. We had a daughter at 22 weeks due to unexpected complications. She lived briefly, and then she was gone. We planned a funeral, we went, and we buried our child. And there's a memory that I'll never be able to forget. I remember turning away from her grave with a feeling that I'd never known before, never wanted to feel again. I felt like I had failed as a father, as a husband, as a doctor. I hated that feeling, and what made it worse that it did not pass quickly. It stayed with me. It was unresolved, it was quiet, and it was heavy. But somewhere in that grief, something else took shape. I wanted to do everything I could to help someone avoid ever feeling the same weight. And I realized, though, that I could not change every outcome, but I could still help someone walk through it. I could be present and I could be steady, and I could be there when it mattered the most. That's when obstetrics stopped being a rotation and it became a calling of its own. I pushed harder than anyone. I showed up early for cases I didn't have to show up for. I volunteered when others did not. I moonlighted weekends and triage. I knew I needed experience and I went after it. I asked. I showed up again. Even when I couldn't do anything, I kept showing up. The work was not about ambition. It was about my purpose. It was about honoring a loss by serving others well. And in that process, I learned something that surprised me. I did not just tolerate obstetrics. I loved it. That season shaped me more than any other season. In fact, it changed who I was. Today, I'm a husband and a father of 4, Lucas, Walker, Emery, and Hallie Pearl. Each one of them carries a piece of my heart and a reminder of what really matters. And through every season, every transition, every hard decision, I'm still married to my beautiful wife, Joanna. She has been steady when things felt uncertain, patient when the path was unclear, supportive when the cost was real. She believed in me when the future did not come with guarantees, and she carried it more than her share of the weight without ever asking for recognition. And any good that I do in this world is built on the foundation of the Lord and her faithfulness to the Lord. our marriage. She truly is a definition of strength. As our family grew, so did my clarity. I knew I wanted to be a husband. I knew the kind of father I wanted to be. And that began to take shape, but it didn't take shape like I wanted it to. I watched care become commoditized as a physician. Patients became numbers. Time became a metric. Decisions were more driven by spreadsheets instead of stories. I could not reconcile that with the calling that had brought me here in the first place. I did not go into medicine to move people through rooms. I went into medicine to take care of people in those rooms, to know them, to sit with them when things were hard, to celebrate with them when things were good. So I made another hard choice. I opened my own practice, not to be different for the sake of being different, but to be faithful to what I believe care was supposed to look like. A place where patients were known, where they were heard, where they felt like they were taken care of and never treated like a number. That decision was not about control, it was about integrity. It was about aligning my work with my values, my faith, and my responsibility that I was called to. This is not just about what I do, it is who I am, and it is the legacy that I want to leave, not just for my patients, but for my children who are watching what it looks like to live with purpose. All of that is why my voice matters now, not because something is new or I have something novel to say, but because I have lived long enough to know what is worth protecting. I've stood at bedsides in moments of joy and in moments of loss. I have watched systems help people and I have watched systems fail them. I've been inside of medicine long enough to see where it is healing and where it is drifting. I'm no longer willing to stay silent when I know there was a better way. I started this podcast because medicine was never meant to feel distant. Care was never meant to be transactional. Healing has always been relational. And somewhere along the way, we forgot that. This is not about nostalgia or going backwards. It's about restoring what matters. Presence, responsibility, courage, truth. It is about slowing down enough to see people clearly again. About stepping into conversations that are uncomfortable but necessary. About reminding ourselves that the person in front of us is not a data point, but they are a human being with a story that matters. My voice matters here because I'm not speaking from theory. I am speaking from the exam room, the delivery room, the living room, the front porch, the hardest places in between. I'm speaking as a physician, a husband, a father, and a man who has had to choose alignment over applause more than once. Create this space called Country Doctor House Calls to have real conversations about medicine, about faith, about family, about responsibility, about the kind of lives we are building and the kind of legacy we are leaving behind. If you have ever felt like something essential has been lost in the noise, then this is the place to find it again. Not with easy answers, but with honest conversation. Not with outrage, but with purpose. This is why I am here, and this is why this story matters.